I'd like you all to take a second and think about the happiest moments in your life. Now with that in mind, I ask you, why isn't every moment of your life as happy as that one? For me, the pursuit of happiness is really just putting one foot in front of the other, with each step that you take, making you a little bit happier than before. And if you think about your happiest moment being here and where you are right now, the pursuit of happiness is really just taking steps to get there, to raise your level of happiness, until every moment in your life is as happy as your happiest moment. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I should introduce myself. My name is Pervez. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio in the US. I'm 31 years old, and I should mention I have 2 gray hairs. I studied electrical and computer engineering at Ohio State University, and then I went and worked in the oil industry in the Middle East. And I made a lot of money, but I was completely miserable, and I didn't like how my life was going. So I kind of thought as a golden jail to break out of it, and I did exactly that by going to business school at IE Business School in Madrid, Spain. And while there, I was surrounded by people from all over the world, from many different countries. I learned a lot about business, especially social business, which is something I'd never heard of coming from the oil industry, big surprise. And I think I learned the most about how to live passionately from the Latin Americans and from the Spaniards that I was surrounded by. From there, I went to Denmark. Denmark is the happiest country in the world. It was an article from 5 days ago on CNN. So I thought if there's any place in the world that I could find happiness, it's going to be in Denmark. But I think this is not going to be the shortest TED Talk in history. I didn't find happiness there. But I did get a job working in renewable energy, which is my goal. Since I worked in the oil industry, I wanted to atone for those sins. And by society's definition, I had achieved success. I was successful in the eyes of my parents, my peers, and society. But I wasn't happy. And I realized that I didn't want to be successful, I wanted to be happy. I started asking myself questions, like what are my passions in life? What are my goals? What kind of stories do I want to tell my grandkids someday? What's my purpose in life? And from there, the Happy Nomad Tour was born. I've been traveling and volunteering my way around the world for the past 25 months. I've done everything from install solar panels in rural Honduras. I've played with orphans on 3 different continents. I've taught English in villages you can't find on Google Maps. And I've even been a street vendor in Peru, selling bread to help subsidize a kindergarten in an underprivileged area. And I've traveled as cheaply as possible until now. After 2 years, I've spent less than $800 on accommodation. I stay with local people everywhere I go because I'd like to see the world through their perspective and through their eyes. And as she said, until now I've been to 71 countries. People always ask me, Adam, what is happiness? And for me, I define it using the word love. Love is something we all experience, and for many of us, we've gone through the experience of falling in love. But for me, happiness is being in love with life. And this is the entrepreneurship of happiness. So for me, an entrepreneur is someone who sees where things are, where things should be, and assumes the risk in an innovative venture to fill in this gap, to make things happen, and to close the gap. So inherent in the pursuit of happiness, as well as in entrepreneurship, there's the idea of risk. But I'm happy to tell you that when it comes to pursuing happiness, there's no such thing as failure, unlike in business. And the reason for that is that there's already an unlimited, infinite supply of happiness inside each and every one of us. And it's kind of like, it's always there, and sometimes we tap into it by accident. Maybe the birth of a healthy child, maybe hearing our favorite song at just the right moment, maybe even, the moment you know you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody. But it's always there, and I kind of think of it as a radio station, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week inside of us. But either we don't know it's there, or even if we know it's there, it can be difficult to tune in. So, for me, the rest of this talk, I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to tune into this infinite, unlimited supply of happiness. Let's start in Colombia. This is an American guy named Marcos, and Marcos was going through a very difficult time in his life. He had just recently gotten divorced, the business that he built with his brother was failing, and he just needed to clear his head and get out. So he'd always had a dream of going to Colombia. Unfortunately, at the time, it was the most dangerous country in the world to be in. It was right in the middle of their drug violence. But he went to Medellin nevertheless, and he went hiking in the woods, in the mountains around the city one day. And he discovered a village called Regalo de Dios, which means gift of God in English. And he started talking to people there, and everybody there had a much worse story than he had. They had all had their farms confiscated by the paramilitary organizations, and they were all basically internal refugees, seeking somewhat as much security as they could and a new life in the city. And he decided he needed to do something to help this community. So he started an organization called Ángeles de Medellín. And it's a community center that he set up where the children can come and have a safe place to play, to have fun. There's computers there so they can learn technology. Marcos is always putting on events, and there's volunteers that help him from all over the world that have different skills that they can teach the kids. And he's really made a huge impact in this community, so much so that they call him the father of the mountain, the Padre de la Montaña. And you can see there's no happier man in Colombia. Look at that smile. So for me, Marcos has tapped into his unlimited supply of happiness and become an entrepreneur of happiness by seeing where things were, that these families were all in destitutes and the poverty cycle was guaranteed to repeat itself with their children. He saw where things should be, that given the right environment, some safety, and some learning materials and everything else, he could fill in this gap and not let these children down. And I think he succeeded. So, for me, Marcos' story is really one of pushing your comfort zone. When you push your comfort zone, you become vulnerable, and you so often invite the exact things that you need into your life when you become vulnerable. In Marcos' case, it was inspiration, it was new perspectives, happiness, and love. And I can guarantee you that when you push your comfort zone, magical things happen. More magical than you could ever possibly imagine. So Marcos taught us about pushing your comfort zone. Now let's take a walk down Greenwich Road. Over the past 2 years, I've been invited into the homes of hundreds of people, hundreds of strangers, and they've truly blessed my journey by sharing me with their families and their circle of friends, and gotten to see the world and happiness from their perspective. But I contrast this extreme blessing that I've experienced, kind of made my trip go from being a tourist to a traveler. I contrast that with the horrible images that we see every day on the news. There's all kinds of negativity and pessimism, and it's easy to have a cynical mindset when you see all that stuff. And when you have a cynical or pessimistic mindset, when you go about your daily business in the world, you scan for those kinds of negative things to reinforce that mindset that you have. But it's so easy to develop and cultivate a happier mindset. So my second tip is to start with gratitude journal. It's a risk-free thing. There's no risk involved. Maybe a little bit of money to buy a notebook. And just write down 3 to 5 things every day before you go to sleep that you feel happy or grateful about. And in the beginning, it'll seem like a silly thing to do, or it'll even seem like, what I have to write down, which is difficult. But in time, you'll start training your brain to see the positive things in life that are already there in abundance. You just never recognized it before. For me, it's kind of like having 2 prisms in front of your eyes. And these prisms can let in happy, positive things, happy, positive light, or it can let in negative things. And it's really up to you. But of course, there's really no prisms in front of your eyes. It's your brain. So going through this exercise, you can train your brain to see the positive things. If perception is reality, why don't we start perceiving the good stuff through the positive? Marcos taught us about pushing your comfort zone, and now we have gratitude. Now we'll meet an amazing, inspirational woman from Peru. This woman's name is Consuelo Pasco. She taught literature for 30 years in the Lima public schools. And when she retired in 2005, she went back to her home village called Yauya, 3,000 meters high up in the Andes Mountains in the middle of nowhere, also not in Google Maps. And she went back and she saw that her village was falling behind in the 21st century. The kids that she was teaching in Lima had all the information in the world at their fingertips through the internet and through technology. In Yauya, they had just gotten electricity a few years earlier, so you can get an idea of how far behind they were. And she said, I want to do something to change this. I want to do something positive for the people, for my people, my fellow people from Yauya. So she referred to her passion. She likes literature. Literature is her passion. And she started a library, the first library for miles and miles and miles around. So this is the library in Yauya, but it wasn't good enough. It was amazing to bring books from all over the Spanish-speaking world to this place so high up in the Andes Mountains. But kids would still have to walk 2 or 3 hours each way just to get to the library. And for her, that was unacceptable. So she solicited more donations, and she was able to put libraries full of children's books in every elementary school. So no child in Yauya is more than a few steps away from a book to inspire them. For me, Consuelo is an entrepreneur of happiness, and she's tapped into that unlimited supply of happiness inside of herself by seeing where things were, that her village is falling far behind in the 21st century, where things should be, that no human being on this planet, but especially not her people in Yauya, should be without the inspiration that the written word has given us over the centuries, and the capacity and the canon of human knowledge that is available in encyclopedias and literature. And she filled in the gap with this organization, this library. Consuelo's organization is called Hatunani, which in Quechua, the language spoken in the Andes Mountains, means long walk or long journey. So I ask you, what kind of a long walk or long journey can you make for your community? People are always asking me, Adam, what can I do for my community? Or what can I do to volunteer? I'd like to do something, but there's so many options. I just don't know where to start. Let's look at Consuelo. She went back to her community and she referred to her passions. What am I passionate about? And she applied that to her community. I guess that sounds funny, coming from a guy like me, who's been traveling and volunteering everywhere but his local community. But if you look closely, you'll see this crazy hair on my head. 2 years ago, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately last year he passed away. And when he was battling cancer, I called my brother one day, and I said, what can I do to honor Uncle Larry, or Uncle Hanson as we called him, because he was just a special kind of guy. And my brother said, why don't you grow your hair and donate it? So I looked online, and I found an organization called Wigs for Kids in my local community. And they take donated hair, they make wigs for kids who are battling cancer and other diseases, and give them a wig completely for free so they can focus on getting better, instead of focus on deflecting the attention they get from adults for home. And up until now, I've been able to do a fundraiser with them, and I've raised about $2,500, which pays for about 1.5 wigs for these children. And I think you've never really lived until you've done something for someone who can never repay you. And I hope you all get to experience that in your community someday. Because the world is nothing but a collection of communities. And if we all do something positive to benefit our community, the whole world is a better place as a result. So we have helping your community from Consuelo, we have gratitude, and we have pushing your comfort zone from Marcos. So, when I was in Denmark, I had two paths in front of me. I had the path of least resistance, which would have meant I stayed in Denmark. I wasn't terribly happy, but I had a good job, I had financial security, and I had the esteem and success from society, from my parents, and from my peers. The other path was the Happy Nomad tour, where I had no financial security. I had no physical security in many places I've been, and society would think I was crazy. Of course, you know which one I chose. I took what I call the happiness plunge, which is where I came up with the title for my website, happinessplunge.com. And I'm here to tell you, this is the fourth tip I have, maybe the most important, that happiness is a decision. You have to decide to be happy. You have to decide that from this moment going forward, every decision I make will contribute to my happiness. And maybe that sounds a bit selfish. I don't know, maybe it sounds selfish. But I think Consuelo and Marcos' story show you just how unselfish happiness really is. And I'd like you to think of a birthday cake. One reason is because today is my mom's birthday, and I'd like to say I love you, Mom, happy birthday. But if you think of a birthday cake, it tastes so good and it's so beautiful, different designs. So you might think that eating the whole cake yourself would be a great experience, but probably halfway through you become sick to your stomach, be sick of the cake, and probably throw half of it away. On the other hand, you can have a cake and have a piece for yourself, and share the other pieces with your friends, family, and even strangers. And they'll all be a little bit happier. You'll be happy because the piece that you had tastes good and that you shared this. And everybody's happiness will be a little bit higher. So happiness is meant to be shared, and it multiplies when you share it. I'd like to tell you a quick story from my experience in India last year. I was traveling in India, and I was in Amritsar, the home of the Golden Temple for the Sikhs. And I was going to Jaipur, the capital of Rajasthan. And it finally happened. I went to sleep on this night train, and I woke up feeling completely horrible. It was a panic. I had to get to the bathroom as soon as possible. You all know what happens next. I won't share the details. But as I proceeded to lose about 10% of my body weight, I don't know where from, there's not much here. I lost 10% of my body weight in that bathroom. And it was a miserable experience. But in the bathroom, I had many realizations. I felt nothing but happiness and joy as this was all happening. I think that's hard to imagine, but the truth is, my old and negative, cynical self would have said, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why can't I be healthy? Blah, blah, blah. But the new me was so happy and grateful, because you see, buses in India don't have bathrooms, and I almost took a bus that night. So imagine, I don't know what I would have done. Another reason is that I was happy that I wasn't feeling worse. I could have felt worse. I could have had something worse than what I had. I knew I would just sleep for a few days and I'd be back to normal. And lastly, it was the middle of the night, and I was happy that I could spend the whole night in the bathroom. Nobody was knocking on the door, needing to use the bathroom. I could stay there the whole night. So in that Indian bathroom, on that train, I realized two things. First of all, if you go back to the beginning of my talk, I said that with enough steps on your pursuit of happiness, your average level of happiness can be as high as the happiest moments of your life. For me in that bathroom, I realized that my lowest point in the past couple of years, my lowest point on the Happy Nomad tour, my most unhappy point, was still higher than my happiest point in my pre-Happy Nomad tour life. And then the second thing that I realized was that I was completely and utterly in love with life, which is my definition for happiness. Going forward, Islamic scholar Rumi said that yesterday I was clever and I tried to change the world. Today I'm clever and I'm changing myself. The pursuit of happiness is really just a pursuit of changing yourself, several steps of changing yourself. And although Consuelo and Marcos' story show how much they could change their community and do positive things, They had so much personal change that they had to go through in the meantime. I had to keep the story short, but they had to overcome a lot of obstacles. But in both of their cases, they didn't seek to make the biggest splash in the water. They sought to create the most ripples as they pursued happiness and got happier and happier. So that's kind of where I am right now in my life. I'm seeking to create the most ripples, and from what I understand, a lot of people aren't happy at their day job. So I've returned to the corporate world, and I'm helping companies create and cultivate happier workplaces. Happier employees are more productive, they're more engaged, and they're more productive at work, but they're also less likely to quit. And for me, the most important thing is that happier employees are actually happier human beings. And if I can raise their happiness just a little bit, they also will create ripples outward into their communities and into their families. I'm also in the drawing board stages of starting a nonprofit organization related to happiness and love. I have a 5-year plan. I don't know where I'm sleeping in 5 days, but somehow I'm sure the 5-year plan will work out. So, with that, I'd like to close with a quote from Buddha. Buddha said, "Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of that candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared." As you all go forward, strengthening the light of your candle and becoming entrepreneurs of happiness yourself, please light as many candles as you can along the way. Thank you so much.